More bill, but it's a disgrace.
Right. David Clark.
Mr. Chair, it's a delight to follow my colleague, the Honourable Parakura Horomia, who has put his finger on a number of important issues addressed in this bill. He has really brought home some of the issues that continue to affect many members of our population, and drawn attention to the need to have them addressed more seriously than in the kind of haphazard way that the National Party has sought to address them over the years, or not address them. Mr. Chair, I remind us all that it's not so long ago that Bill English himself opposed such a revenue increase, saying that the government didn't say it would do it, and that it's the government's standard, not ours. He was washing his hands of it. He was just labelling it a tax increase and saying it was a tax increase on the poorest people of New Zealand, an increase that is far too large, and that's why we voted against it. So the Finance Minister not so long ago was voting against this kind of measure. There's a certain irony in his supporting it now. But we see it for what it is. It is a cynical tax grab. 528 million over the next 4 years, the Treasury say, into the Treasury coffers. And we know that's why the government's doing it. We know they're concerned about the revenue hole left with the 4% revenue drop during their term in office, largely due to economic conditions being poor. This government has the worst economic record of any government in 50 years. They had hoped for better. They described their 2010 package as broadly fiscally neutral, and it's proven to be anything but, unless one uses the term broad in the broadest sense. Look, we know that smoking remains the single biggest cause of preventable morbidity and mortality in New Zealand. Around 1 in 5 adults currently smoke. This bill directly affects a significant portion of our population. It is an issue that needs to be tackled. Labor will be supporting the bill because this is a measure in the right direction. We've had a principled stance on this right the way through. It's not about a tax grab as far as we're concerned. It's actually about addressing the health issue that lies behind it. And so Labor continues to support this, continues to be consistent in this regard, and Maggie Barry will acknowledge that this is the right thing to do. I don't think she would say it's the wrong thing to do. Her government is now supporting this measure. But what we see is that equally in the papers that we've had before us in the Select Committee, the regulatory impact statement from the Treasury, which explains the effect of this legislation on smokers. In 2010, Cabinet favoured this sequence of 3 10% steps rather than a one-off 30% increase. And it's because it considered that it would offer a repeated set of messages to smokers. This is what is contained in the regulatory impact statement. The Treasury does not have evidence, it goes on to say, does not have any evidence available to support one approach over the other as being more likely to be effective in prompting sustained reductions in smoking. I think what sits behind this particular choice is that this government doesn't want to deal with it on multiple occasions. They want to get this dirty act over. They want to get the revenue banked in the coffers. They don't want to address the health issue too many times. And so that's why they've chosen the 30% over the 10% when they've had direct advice from Treasury that it makes no difference whatsoever. The effect on smokers, of course, is significant. An average smoker smokes 12 cigarettes a day, we're told, and assuming a current price of $16 for a packet of 20, that amounts to $3,500 per year, Mr. Chair. And continuing to smoke those 12 cigarettes per day, we're told, will cost the average smoker an additional $1,130 more per year. This is a significant measure. It will affect behaviour. It will make a difference because we know that price and marketing is the most effective way of dealing with addictions. We know that in the alcohol sphere. We see the government avoiding those measures in the alcohol sphere currently, but to its credit, it is taking on the price issue here, albeit for perhaps the wrong reasons. Certainly the Otago University presenters who came to our Select Committee identified this. They portrayed this, although in more polite and academic terms, as a naked revenue grab. and they advocated for some changes in the bill. The first was to clearly establish that the purpose of the bill is to save, like Mr Chair,
David Clark.
that the purpose of the bill is to save lives rather than to increase government revenue, to make the purpose absolutely clear. Secondly, they advocated that to clearly establish the bill as part of the government's plans for a smoke-free nation in 2025. And that is an interesting point which I will come back to, because if it were adopted as part of the government's plan for a smoke-free nation in 2025, we might see some additional measures, because the Treasury also tells us that this measure alone is unlikely to achieve that goal. And they also advocate for increasing the tax rises to 40% in the first instance, and at least 20% in subsequent rises. And the researchers from the University of Otago, whose specialist topic this is, who've done the research, who understand what would make a change, and people based and educated largely in New Zealand's finest city, would recommend that we also reduce duty-free allowances for tobacco products to 1 pack of 20 cigarettes or the equivalent. They would also urgently investigate establishing a minimum price for tobacco. These are measures that the Select Committee did not decide to adopt. And they further would suggest that we ensure tax increases are implemented with co-interventions. And they outline a series of ways in which that could be done, effectively hypothecating the additional tax take, perhaps a dirty word to the Treasury, the H-bomb and the hypothecation, but it's actually a way of having the changes accepted by the public. We know that the public will accept positive changes, and particularly smokers in the general public, when they know that they will be provided with assistance to help break the habit as a part of that package. They note, these researchers, that the overwhelming evidence is that tax increases are one of the most effective means to reduce smoking prevalence. And they cite the modelling work carried out by the NZIER for the Ministry of Health, which demonstrated that substantial tax increases would be an important component of achieving the 2025 smoke-free goal. Now, the Treasury advises that the increases proposed won't be sufficient to achieve that goal on their own. We note that there is a paucity of other policy being brought forward by the government, and all of that, of course, highlights the fact that, as far as the government is concerned, this is an attempt to fill their revenue hole. The 4% loss of revenue in the government books, 1.5% attributed by the IRD to the global financial crisis, but 2.5% of which attributed directly to government policy changes. This attempt to begin to fill that revenue hole, because the economy has not grown. The policies the government has adopted, the tax policies here we're discussing, and other policies the government's adopted, have not grown the economy sufficiently that the revenue is there to afford the public services that we all value. So we see this bill as a tax grab. Unfortunately, it is not achieving the 2025 goal that we'd hope it would. We also note that the Treasury's advice is that the social policy objectives won't be met because excise increases should be considered as part of a broader package. And they also note that the stock of current smokers will still be the majority of smokers in 2025. So even aggressive increases in tobacco excise rates alone are unlikely to be sufficient to achieve the smoke-free goal in this time frame. So, Mr Chair, I put it to you that this is clearly a measure as a tax grab. It is going to achieve positive results, so we will support it. We do wish the government would go further, and I look forward to hearing from the next member who will speak, and I hope it's Maggie Barry. I hope she will enlighten us as to the wider government policy on this issue, and not just tell us about the naked tax grab which this current bill represents. Thank you, Mr Chair. Sorry, colleague.
I'd like to hear the Honourable Shane